My focus today is on love and power in the Community Development Society. I want to thank everybody for the members for electing me as your chair. This has been a challenging but also a rewarding time in CDS. Next slide. Charles Dickens captured the radical opposites that many of us felt this past year. It was the winter of despair and the spring of hope. Our initial challenges as your board included, as your elected board, included a delay of 6 months before we could take our offices. During that time, your board did not have access to finances, our membership records, our website, and other digital information. I'm so grateful for the January thaw in which we gained our legitimacy as an elected board. It was the beginning of a CDS spring. I continue to be inspired by our CDS officers, board members, partners, and other members who have worked heroic hours to gain access to our data, our finances, and legal authority. I appreciate our leaders' transparency, questioning perspectives, and tenacity. Our journal editors have continued with compelling publications, and although our 2000 conference is smaller than usual, I have found it to be, what I've really appreciated is this self-reflection about who we are as a society and where we're going. We're on the mend. Next slide. As your outgoing chair, I want to focus today on 2 aspects of community development, love and power. The Reverend Martin Luther King wrote about this balance of love and power when he says power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Love is usually defined as romance or a deeply held affection, but that doesn't really capture it. Most definitions of love are ambiguous. Next slide. The author, Bell Hooks, and her name is spelled in lowercase, that's how she did it, wrote that love in action is an action. It's never simply a feeling. For many of us, the Community Development Society is our beloved community of community developers. When we are at our best, love is a verb. It is expressed through compassionate listening that gets to the heart of issues. It minimizes the use of judgmental listening in which we take sides. As I look at CDS, I see so many manifestations of love as a verb when people are learning from each other, sharing stories, and finding a common ground in spite of our differences. It leads to a greater sense of solidarity. Love is expressed in our literature and collective nonviolent action for more environmental and social justice. We're at our best when we make it difficult for people to humiliate and silence other sides and bring out the best in others. I witness it in how we work with others to address loveless structures, including racism, patriarchy, environmental degradation, and the excesses of capitalism. Our CDS members and leaders are loving when we create ambiances for people to connect at a deeper level. According to Bell Hooks, love is about lasting social change, and it's through changing structures, changing cultures, changing behaviors and action. I see love manifested in the community development field in so many ways. We see it in those who take lower salaries or positions or invest immense volunteer hours to help communities develop a greater sense of solidarity and capacity building. I see it in our CDS leaders who have made immense sacrifices as volunteers to practice active love through labor and fortitude and to advance the field to new levels. Next slide. I see love manifested in our values and actions as expressed in the latest July 2022 draft of the CDS Principles of Good Practice. Let's just look at 4 of those principles. Liberation and empowerment is about encouraging community members to build a strong self-image, create shared power, and think and do for themselves. That's love. Social justice is about addressing the many forms of oppression experienced by both historically marginalized groups and emerging social identities. The other principle that we're looking at is dignity with diversity. It's about building mutual trust and respect among diverse social identities and cultures by practicing humility, non-judgmental listening, acknowledging past and current harms, and demonstrating accountability. I see that so often in our field. And then collaboration is about crossing boundaries of place, sector, discipline, and interest to integrate diverse perspectives and resources in co-creation of community. There are so many love opportunities in CDS. I think we need an action plan to make CDS more welcoming for underrepresented groups from various racial and ethnic backgrounds, LGBTQ, and more interactions with those involved in social and environmental justice work. We need to learn more from our members about the love they find in CDS and how to increase it. I wonder, could there be a group that could read Bell Hook's All About Love book or other publications that are emerging about love and community development and see or make recommendations about how some of those ideas could be incorporated into CDS? There are questions I would like to raise. Do we have the tools or structures to better address differences or conflicts in organizations and for love to be manifested through conflict, through differences? And also raising the question, is love implicit or explicit in our mission and ethic statements? In essence, I would like to challenge us to look deeper at the dynamics of love in CDS and in the community development field. So my question is, how can we create venues for love to become more potent and visible in CDS? Love, I want to argue, needs to be balanced with power in community development. It can be argued that power in a community is the ability to affect the decision-making process and use of resources, both public and private, within a community or watershed group. Power is simply the capacity to bring about change. It is the energy to get things done. In community development, we do not strive to have the power over people in ways that are manipulative or coercive. Our focus is on shared power as sustainable and energizing. So power, next slide, is important for the community development field. It builds upon our shared values of building solidarity, self-determination, and capacity building. Our field has a wealth of tools and theories that are helpful. I also see community developers as balancing the forces of dominant power with more inclusive power that influences culture, behavior, and policy among communities of interest, place, and practice. CDS has a rich 53-year history with engaging journals, book series, highly acclaimed conferences and webinars, a monthly newsletter, active committee and working groups, and mutually satisfying relationships that add so much value to our lives. The community development field, though, next slide, has growing power these days because of devolution and interest in more local control and development of more nonprofits. There are now over 100 community development degree programs and certificates at minors, majors, at universities in Canada and in the US. There are similar international trends. I see more community development job offerings. There are more publications and digital information about CD. The nature of community development participatory power is important because it balances the kind of dominant power that stifle or silence voices that should have a role for sustainable community development. I want to argue that power in community development is vulnerable to fragmentation. We see that there is no system. CD degree programs do not communicate for the most part with each other or have a core curricula or any form of accreditation. So I'm pleased, for example, my own University of Kentucky Community and Leadership Development Department is only 3 hours away from Vanderbilt University that has a master's and PhD in the field. Yet we don't communicate with each other, we don't debate, we don't interact in any way. This is repeated over and over again in the field, this fragmentation. I'm pleased that Margaret Stout has written a planning grant to stimulate communication among these degree programs. There are also 14 professional organizations, community development organizations in the US alone. Most do not communicate with each other except for involvement with National Association of Community Development Extension Professionals and the International Association of Community Development. In essence, there are 11 sister organizations that we do not communicate with that are powerful. The Society for Community Research and Action is a group of community psychologists. They have about 350 people that come to their meetings. There's the Neighborhoods USA that also has powerful conferences. A number of years ago, I stopped to visit the Christian Community Development Association that has, it was in Chicago. There were 4,000 people at their meetings, mostly from inner city churches, a strong African-American representation, and social justice oriented. They speak our language of building solidarity, building capacity, but they do not have a research base. So we can offer them something. There are other groups. We just need to stimulate interaction. our power is also fragmented by our current CDS membership levels are at historic lows. At one point, back in the ancient day of 1999, when I was the president of CDS, we had almost 1,000 members, and now we're down to less than 200. Some of that is problems with our website and difficulties in renewing and so forth, membership or signing up for membership. In addition, so I think that's, CDS is also unknown by many foundations and groups that do community development work. So our power is fragmented by this lack of recognition. We need to build more power for community development influence. So I'm pleased that we can move forward in connecting somehow this 100 CD community development educational programs with each other. We also need to expand our communications with our sister organizations that I've mentioned earlier. We also need to increase the readership of CDS journals and increase CDS membership substantially. I believe that we need an aggressive membership campaign to attract community foundations, organizations, and individuals. Without such effort, our power to influence the field will be limited. New members can challenge us to new heights and to have more impact on the field. Seasoned members could serve as mentors to newcomers. We need more member involvement through committees and working groups to better balance the work of the CDS Board of Directors. One of my concerns was when I finished my presidency back in 1999, the board decided to felt that the committees were too powerful, that power needed to be invested back in the CDS board. I think that was an unfortunate move. I remember, again, back when I finished my presidency, writing over 100 thank you notes to people that were involved in various CDS committees. I'd like to see that happen again, that kind of growth and that kind of involvement. Our monthly newsletters, webinar series can be expanded to build bridges with groups involved in Native American and Indigenous influence approaches to CD, faith-based community development, urban development, and around issues such as public health, LGBTQ, environment, community economics, and community development degree and certificate programs. Unless we address this fragmentation, our field cannot fully blossom. In essence, as your chair, outgoing chair, I want us to recognize the existence of love as a verb in the Community Development Society. I have seen how people have sacrificed so much of themselves in this work. I'm reminded of one of my favorite authors, Dostoevsky and the brothers Karamazov. This woman comes to a Russian monk, Father Zosima, and she says, I'd love to work with the poor, but I'm concerned they won't be grateful, and I'm concerned that they might smell and so forth. And he says, in the brothers, Dostoevsky writes, love in dreams is a wonderful and beautiful thing, but love in action is a harsh and dreadful thing. That is, love in action often involves sacrifice, and it can be hard. So I've witnessed hard love, this kind of sacrifice with our current board, current members, and committee and working group leaders. It's phenomenal. So thank you for loving in the pain. So in essence, I believe that community development is a balancing that love with shared power. I want to thank you for your affirmation of my role as chair, but also for our great board, our committee members, various networking groups, for our bold new website, our interim administrator, our highly productive board committees and working groups. I appreciate the top-notch people who will be serving on this incoming board. Indeed, we have emerged from a dark winter to a season of hope and light. Thank you.